Think of all the FBI's greatest hits in just the last few years. There was the spontaneous rewriting of the law to protect Hillary Clinton. There was the use of the Pissgate dossier as foundational evidence in the Russia investigation and surveillance pursuant to it. And more recently, the largest and most resource-intensive investigation in the history of the Bureau has produced results like bringing grandmas who took wrong turns with their walkers to justice, and wrongly kicking down the doors of other grandmas in the Alaskan frontier trying to recover Nancy Pelosi's laptop, but never finding it and having no charges to show for this multi-thousand-mile effort. And of course, the seizure of a Lego set that was supposedly used to plot the attack that, in the context of impeachment, we were told wasn't plotted at all. It was incited, which was the entire basis for the charge. So is the FBI just clownishly incompetent, or are they ideologically partisan in their operation? Either factor independently or together can explain these stories we've seen, and most likely it's some combination of both. But you have to wonder, if they're so comically bad at their jobs, how are they successful in identifying their target? And sometimes they're not. In stories like the Alaska one, they're just dead wrong. But otherwise, that's where you come in. Of the people investigated for the Capitol riot, a huge percentage of them were reported to the FBI by friends, family, or other personal associates. Often it was prompted just by social media posts seen by some friend of yesteryear, but in many cases, this reporting happened after someone had personally confided with a friend or family member about what had happened, and that supposedly close friend or family member ratted them out. And I get it. It's not as though you should always cover for someone close to you. Serious crimes need to be brought to justice. If my family member was a murderer, for example, I wouldn't be complicit in denying his victims the justice they deserve. But there is an extremely dangerous flip side we all should be wary of. Excesses in our eagerness to report to authorities, and questions we should consider before we dial up that FBI hotline. What exactly is a serious crime for which justice should break that priority of family bond? And how much do you trust a gigantic, amorphous, largely unaccountable federal bureaucracy hundreds or thousands of miles away to actually secure it? Because the FBI loves it when you do that snitch work for them. They love it when you see your brother or your friend's receipt from Legoland, or the MAGA hat in his closet, or the spicy memes in his DMs, and you give them that excuse to kick doors or tap lines or otherwise harass people. That's not speculation or accusation. They're openly begging for it. On Sunday, the FBI posted a tweet that reads, quote, "Family members and peers are often best positioned to witness signs of mobilization to violence, help prevent homegrown violent extremism. Visit this link to learn how to spot suspicious behaviors and report them to the FBI." And the link directs you to the FBI's Extremist Indicators Guide. Watch out for signs like if your family member attempts to radicalize you with their opinions that independent fact checkers dispute, or if they buy tactical gear like armor, or if, God forbid, they actually train to get proficient with weapons or self-defense. Maybe they might actually land a shot instead of shooting a dog supposedly on accident. Now, to be fair, much of this document is about more tangibly violent things, plotting an attack or sending money to ISIS, that sort of thing. But much of it is not. Much of it is purely about monitoring the viewpoints of your friends or family and ratting them out to the FBI on that basis. So we're not talking your brother killed a guy or your friend robbed a bank and you feel a moral obligation to bring that crime to justice. We're talking your brother or your friend has a certain viewpoint, and you think that viewpoint is an indicator of a future crime. You think that viewpoint is pre-crime. And so you nod to the feds to take care of him in a way that apparently a brother or a friend like you doesn't actually care enough to. If you won't defend your loved one's fundamental right to a viewpoint, it's clear that you place no serious priority on that relationship at all, and that is how societies crumble. And a lot of this is sort of moot, because at the rate that we're going, the brother or the friend that you're reporting is probably already a Fed anyway, or you're already a Fed, or both. Statistically speaking, it's either you or me who's the Fed in this video watching arrangement right now. Remember, in the Gretchen Whitmer foiled kidnapping plot, 3 out of the 5 people in the van driving to her vacation home to get her were feds or fed informants. So they have their bugs and their plants and their rats and everything already. Maybe we're in too deep for it to matter, but it's never too late to remind ourselves of the dangers of a society that places its allegiance to the state over its allegiance to family and friends and local community. History has taught that lesson repeatedly, and it's teaching it again right now if we just care to look outside our own borders for a minute. Loyalty to state and political party first is the recipe for totalitarianism. With perfect complementary timing, the New York Times has a detailed piece out within the last few weeks titled "A Form of Brainwashing: China Remakes Hong Kong. Neighbors are urged to report one another. Children are taught to look for traitors." It's all about how China's coercion, intimidation, and brute force are reshaping loyalties in Hong Kong away from friends, family, and community, and to the Chinese state and the Communist Party, crushing personal relationships and freedom in pursuit of total domination. Hong Kong's autonomy over its own election systems have been overhauled by Beijing in pursuit of, quote, perfecting them. Beijing's money is now rushing into Hong Kong with strict strings attached, but don't worry, that money brings a promise of prosperity. Draw what comparisons you may. But more importantly, Beijing is waging a campaign to raise future generations that will never think to separate the party's interest from their own. The party is your family. The piece mentions a high school civics teacher who will no longer introduce any ideas critical of the Communist Party into her classroom, for fear of being seen as an extremist and disloyal, something that could get her reported to the authorities by a student or a parent. It's not teaching, she says. It's brainwashing. But when the school children are taught and expected to watch out for dissent and turn her in, I get it. You'd probably rather have your brain washed than splattered against the wall by a firing squad. And perhaps the FBI will look to Beijing for a model on how to build this rat's nest infrastructure. In November, Hong Kong police, at the direction of Beijing, opened a hotline for reporting suspected violations of the security law. That's the legal basis for apprehending and correcting your thought criminal neighbors. The line received over 100,000 tips in just 6 months. Just like our Lego enthusiasts and selfie-taking grandmas, this tip line helped to arrest a man accused of sedition because he put wrong-think stickers on the gate of an apartment unit. So Gugon or a totalitarian surveillance state. Either will get the job done against unauthorized stickers, but you should be very careful about which tool you pick. And speaking of the appropriate tool, there's a glaring irony this New York Times piece doesn't mention, and of course the FBI never would, but even if you do think that domestic extremism is a real and serious problem, who or what do you trust to quell it? Do you trust caring friends and family to look out for each other first? Perhaps close friends and family are actually the best de-radicalizers we have? Or do you trust some central faraway authority who's never actually met your friends or family, but somehow knows best how to get through to them and deter any risky or dangerous behavior? I don't know about you, but I have never made a serious decision based on what the government told me. I have made every serious decision based on what my close friends and family told me. And they've never used fear to persuade me, only reason based on genuine concern for me and my life, and an intimate knowledge of me as a person. So what does that fear do to you? That is what we'll all have to decide. Does that fear compel you to stand tall for what matters most and against those who threaten it? Or does that fear intimidate you into cowering in sacrifice of everything most important in your life, your family, your community, your very freedom itself? That is the choice that will define the coming years in this country, as it's defining the declining years in Hong Kong right now. And I hope that choice is an obvious one. But if you need a minute to think about it, ease your mind and pass the time with a Lego build that actually is a little bit more extreme. Because if you're going to get rated over a kid's toy, it might as well be a legitimately cool one. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel always. Appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Gab, that is at ML Christensen. You're always welcome to coming out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.